In this overview of channels, we're going to look at some of the traditional look at channel structure and some key concepts behind how channels function and add value to what the customer in the end gets from the product and or service. So let's look first at this first slide where we have what has traditionally been known as a conventional channel. A conventional channel entails at least three entities. You can actually, this has been debated over the years, but you can actually include the consumer yourself. If you've ever been to a box store where you had to bring your own box or bag in to get discount prices on groceries, then you are part of the channel as well, breaking bulk and other things we'll talk about later. But in this overview, when you see these three entities that are businesses, the manufacturer, wholesaler, and retailer level, and this is in a consumer goods channel. We'll talk about a business-to-business or industrial channel in a bit. But what you have here traditionally are three entities that are separately owned. They have their own goals. If they were publicly traded companies, they would have their own stock on a stock exchange, that type of thing. This has been the traditional way that channels were run, and still are, many of them, throughout centuries, really. What has happened in recent years with the rise of the internet from the early 90s when it became available for commercial traffic, but even before then, when you had large retailers like Kroger in the supermarket industry, or Walmart on the rise in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, now it's the largest retailer in the world, you had a demand on the part of the retailer that the manufacturers of the various goods that they carry deal directly with them. They have the resources to have their own distribution centers and various other functions that have been provided by or are provided by wholesalers in a consumer goods channel. And so these retailers demand to be dealt with directly, and a manufacturer has to be able to do that in those situations. Finally, again, because of the internet, but even pre-internet, if you think of Dell Computers founding, we have a manufacturer who decides to what is called go direct. And go direct means direct distribution to the end consumer. The manufacturer then is dealing on a one-to-one basis with each of its consumers, each of its customers, and has to be able to do what was being done or could be done by wholesalers and retailers. And so it's very important when you're thinking about going direct that you have the capacity to do so, and the talent and resources and funding, etc., to be able to handle all of the different types of functions or services that are done within the channel by the channel members. If we look at business to business, which is often abbreviated B2B with a 2 in the middle, or the older term was industrial goods, but basically organizations of any type that are not individual consumers or households. And what you have here with the manufacturer, traditionally, there are direct channels, we'll see in a moment, but the term for, instead of a wholesaler or various other terms for the middleman, the intermediary, what you have is an industrial distributor. And the industrial distributor then does the various functions from the manufacturer level to get it out into the market to the various types of customers. And the customers are of three types usually. Other distributors, if there's more than one level in the channel, we'll talk about levels later. Actual users of the product or service, or what are called OEMs. OEM is an acronym abbreviation for original equipment manufacturer. And OEMs take a product that is distributed to them and incorporate it into, build it into products that they're making. Like an electrical motor manufacturer that makes electrical motors distributes it to, in the end, an OEM that perhaps puts it in a line of refrigerators they're making, and it's what drives the refrigerator. Just like with consumer markets, you also have in business-to-business markets direct distribution. The larger the user, the larger the end customer that is, the more likely you're going to have direct distribution, as in the consumer goods channel. So you have to be aware of that as well. This whole process of Xing out that intermediary in the consumer goods and now here in the business-to-business goods distribution channels is sometimes termed disintermediation. Just a long-winded way of saying cutting out the middleman, if you will. But as the old saying goes, in channels, you can get rid of an intermediary, but you can't get rid of the functions that the intermediary was providing. And therefore, you either have to provide them yourself, the end customer has to provide them, or they don't get provided and there's less value in the channel. Now, a colleague of mine and I have done some research based on a model that was in a channels textbook of his a few years back. And one of the things I really like about this and giving you a good overview of channels is studies that have been done of successful channels. That is, the partners in the channel, 2 of them, 3 of them, how many ever are total in the channel, are very happy over a long period of time. Very happy and profitable, very happy and there's less conflict. They have a good level of service provided, so they're competitive with other groups of companies who are trying to serve the same market. So anything that you might deem success, these organizations, grouped of them into a channel, show a higher degree of that. Based on several different elements, but 4 of the main ones that have come to the top are the fact that with the first one, pooled resources, they are willing to be approaching this as a team. They do have their own individual goals, as I said before. They might have their own individual stocks. They're answerable to their stockholders, etc. But there's a team concept because they know that's the best way to serve this particular channel. Therefore, they're going to share risks and rewards and fair play and that kind of thing. So they're willing to pool the resources for the betterment of the channel's functioning. The other thing, and all of these are interrelated. If you were to do a study on these, as many people have done, you would find that these are highly correlated concepts and elements here. But the collective goals are, yes, you have your own internal goals again, but you're looking at the market and serving the market well, gaining market share and profitability from serving a particular target market or a set of them. And so here we have collective goals to serve that market, sometimes having to put your own goals perhaps a little bit to the side or maybe a wait and see type of thing because of the collective goals that are necessary for the channel. Sometimes this has to be driven by the largest and or most sophisticated company in the channel system, and that entity has been dubbed a channel captain. Depending on the industry, depending on the market, this could be a manufacturer like a Procter & Gamble. It could be a retailer, a large retailer like Target, or it could even be in small fragmented type of industries. Traditionally the pharmaceutical industry was like this, where you had some large but many small players on the manufacturing side and thousands of customers on the end. And so some of the largest, most sophisticated entities were actually the wholesalers. So pharmaceutical wholesalers became channel captains in many instances. Another thing you see with elements of successful channels is connected system. And this just means they're sophisticated in being able to determine what the need is at any given time and how it's fluctuating so they can cut back and not waste resources making things that are not going to sell. Likewise, they could shift resources to things that are selling a little bit more than had been expected so they don't have stockouts where you run out of something that's popular that's selling and you have opportunity cost of someone buying something else because you didn't have it available for them. Finally, there's flexibility, and there's many different facets of flexibility. One is that even though you have good relationships, if someone is not doing the job they need to do to serve the channel, you're willing to substitute them for some other player who shows more promise or has a proven track record. If you have 3 suppliers of something and you decide that only 2 of them are cutting it as far as quality, on-time deliveries and the like, then you may get rid of one of them. Or you may replace the one with a third outside party to try to see if they can do a better job. And any kind of shock to the system, successful channels handle it very well. Whether it's back in the 90s when you had earthquakes in Japan, and even more recently in Japan, but one in the early 90s, there was an earthquake that hit one of the main distribution centers in the country. But many companies had alternate routes that they immediately switched to. Here in the U.S., back in the early 90s, there was alternating really droughts and floods on the Mississippi River, either of which can cause barge traffic to be backed up for taking longer in strong currents when the river is high, or not being able to get through low passages when the river is low and having to wait. So you can't have something that's perishable waiting on a barge when it needs to be delivered. So successful companies will have the appropriate type of substitution channel as necessary, whether that's rail, trucking, a pipeline in some cases, for things that can go through that method. And then another look at any overview of channels would include the evolution of the marketing concept. Marketing concept is an important factor in any type of marketing studies that you do. It's making sure that you have a focus on what the customer's wants and needs are, and then you go about trying to satisfy those with something that's at a competitive advantage over others who are trying to serve that same, fill that same need. Some of the implications for channels of that concept, when you're in the production era, and there's still channels that are in this era. Traditionally, we think of it as historic, decades ago, if not centuries ago. But sometimes it's a matter of having the right types of heavy, high-capacity systems for moving material to where it needs to be. But that was traditionally what was thought of as a cost, and many people didn't look at channels as strategic aspects of business, but rather a cost, a necessary evil. When you went to a selling orientation in the evolution of marketing channels, it was very similar, except here moving the product physically, also accompanied moving the product by getting people to buy it. So there's a lot of mentality on training salespeople to, the hard sell, the cliche of the glib salesman being able to talk a customer into something they may not need. That's an antithetical to today's marketer, but that was associated with that period of a selling orientation. They have made too much. Let's get rid of it by talking the customer into buying more. We move into the realm of modern marketing, as far as in Western economies, in the U.S. here especially, with the marketing concept coming into the fore of studying wants and needs and then making what is going to be bought. Okay, sometimes that's been criticized as too reactionary. But in some cases, if you have tech firms like Apple, and decades ago when Sony came out with the Walkman, which was a technological marvel at the time in the early 70s, they didn't necessarily do the traditional marketing of studying needs and wants and then designing something. They had something they knew could be done that the customer didn't necessarily know could be done, but they knew that the customer would react well to having something, in the case of Sony in the early 70s, that could play music, that was portable, that was light, and they could use it walking, jogging, or whatever. And so sophisticated companies that might anticipate needs are still practicing the marketing concept, even though they're not studying and finding out what people are saying. Sometimes people don't know the technological capabilities. And finally, taking marketing concept a step further is when we have a recognized relationship between two or more, or among two or more players in a channel. And so here we have all kinds of elements at play, wherein we realize we're in it for the long term. We think of it more as a partnership, and there's lots of good that can come from that, where you lock in resources when you're talking about the business side of things. But when there are lean times and you have a good relationship, partners in the channel can help other entities in the channel kind of make it through those times and get back to a level where they're functioning at a higher level again. And channel functions, I've mentioned several times here. Some of the basic ones when you're looking at an overview of channels, as we are contact efficiency. Just a moment on that one, I'll describe that in the next slide. Routinization, if you deal with another business or another person one time only, or one time every few months or years, you have to kind of do everything that's involved in the transaction different, because you don't have any kind of routine for it. Routinization means when channel partners are practicing together, when they're working together over a long period of time, they can have a lot more efficiencies built into the system by routinizing ordering systems and various other types of elements or channel functions. Another key channel function is sorting. The sorting function enables you to categorize goods, especially when you're thinking of bulk commodity goods like coal, where you grade it and sort it so that you have it available for different types of customers who have different types of needs of those different grades of coal, or any type of other thing as well that you need to categorize. Breaking bulk is a key concept, and that just means that a manufacturer has to make things for economies of scale reasons and reaching overhead at a very large rate. If you're Wrigley Chewing Gum Company in a particular plant, you may make thousands of pounds of gum per day, but your customer goes to Kroger or to a convenience store and buys a pack of gum or a 5-pack of gum. Somehow you've got to get from making tons of gum down to a package of gum into the hands of the customer. The channel provides that function. It's called breaking bulk at different stages to get it to the level it needs for a particular target market. Other channel functions involve minimizing uncertainty. The intermediaries who are closer to the customer usually have really good information. This is why retailers have grown in power over the years, because they are the closest to the customers in the consumer channel. But they feed that information back up the channel, making the entire channel a more efficient, better channel, because uncertainty is lessened. Same thing with that on need uncertainty is market uncertainty, when there are unclear sources of demand, unclear sources of supply on the other end, and any rapid change in the market. A channel that should function to inform, have all members in the channel be able to function together and react. Transaction uncertainty, the timing and reliability of functions of trade, of exchange, means that with the retailer and or wholesaler allowing the manufacturer in on some information about when's the best time to deliver a manufacturing cycle of making particular types of goods, one different form over another. They can be more accurate in doing that with the information that's shared up and down the channel. Now, as a matter of working together regularly, these uncertainties will diminish over time, but especially when you develop relationship marketing. When you have a relationship that you have a focus on, you want to maintain and even improve it, you're going to be focusing on standards, you're going to be focusing on routinization, you're going to be focusing on all these types of what are known as channel norms, so that the channel members feel like they're kind of one team serving that market. I mentioned contact efficiency. The top half of this picture shows 4 sellers and 3 buyers getting something from each seller. That would be 12 transactions. And various charts like this you would look at will show that if you introduce an intermediary, and if you're just not looking at a picture like this at the same time like we're doing here, you might think, okay, there's 7 entities in the top, there's 8 entities in the bottom, it must be more complex. But the assumption here is that when the buyers go to the intermediary, a central marketplace is where marketing got its actual start. That's why we are called marketing, is because there was a central marketplace in many countries, many civilizations around the world. And when you have that intermediary, what happens is the sellers deliver to that intermediary through those 4 transactions, and then the buyers go to the intermediary and buy. The caveat here is they're not just buying one thing at a time like they are in the top. They're buying from all, if they want, from all 4 suppliers, all 4 sellers at the same time in kind of a bundle, if you will. So it's more efficient. That's why it's called contact efficiency. And you see this whenever you're studying channels. You see this as one of the key benefits of working with intermediaries. Finally, in this overview of channels, we look at a particularly well-known type of intermediary in a consumer channel known as a wholesaler. This is an abbreviated chart that you often see in channels textbooks and channels chapters and other marketing texts, where it captures the essence of the 4 major different types of wholesalers. If we look down the left, we have merchant wholesalers, which are independently owned. They're separate businesses, as I said on the very first slide earlier. There's manufacturers, sales organizations, and these the manufacturer owns, and they're out in the marketplace to try to smooth the outflow of goods, if you will. It's not the hard sell, but it's making relationships and being in contact with customers out where they are. Then there's agents and brokers who are there to kind of bring buyer and seller together. This type of intermediary has been the most affected, the most damaged, if you will, by the internet opening up to commercial traffic in the early 90s, because buyers and sellers could find each other more easily and not need the agents and brokers. But good agents and brokers in many industries, for instance, collectibles and art, Sotheby's, for instance, are still very, very strong. And finally, there's the commission merchant who takes possession of goods and then gets them out into the marketplace, negotiating the price, delivery terms, and that type of thing, and works on a percentage of the total sale as their income. Okay, those are the 4 types, archetypes up on the left. Across the top, on the right, the columns show possession, title, negotiation, and promotion. And what we're saying here is, does this wholesaler take possession, actual physical possession of an actual good that's being sold? We're not talking about services here, of course. Do they own it? They may have physical possession in a warehouse, but perhaps they don't actually own it. Either the buyer or the seller actually owns it and would be responsible for insuring it and that type of thing. And do they negotiate on terms of delivery and price and things like that? And do they help promote the good down to the next level of channel or to the end customer? And if you'll notice, looking at the right-hand two columns, all types of wholesalers are at least partially, if not fully, responsible for negotiation and promotion activities or functions. That's one of the values of an intermediary, such as a wholesaler in consumer markets. So they all, those are yeses and nos, by the way, the Y's in the end. So yes, negotiating and promotion for all four types, categories, if you will, of wholesalers. Where they differ is in possession and title, notice. Merchant wholesalers actually buy the goods and own them and then resell them at a markup. That's how they make their profit, for to buy low, sell high. That's similar here. So it's yes and yes for possession and title. Manufacturer sales organizations are arranging the sale, but the goods are elsewhere. They're part of the manufacturer, so yes, they have title, they kind of own it, but they don't possess it. They're getting it to go from point A to point B, but they're at point C negotiating all those other aspects. Agents and brokers are only there to bring the buyer and seller together, so they have nothing to do with the actual physical goods in their possession, nor do they own them at any point. And finally, commission merchants do take possession but don't take title, okay, because they are there to take the goods, break bulk, and do other types of channel functions and get it into the marketplace. So I hope you've enjoyed this overview of what channels are like, some of the key areas that you can study at a later time in a channels course or some other course. You'll know a little bit about the overview of what channels do, what the functions are, how they're structured, and that type of thing.